Well, let's see if we can navigate it in this particular thicket that I head into with David Sampson of Nothing Personal. David Sampson, as I've told you on his podcast, tackles a lot of stuff a lot of other people won't. And so I imagine there's a bit of a difference right now between how Shannon Sharpe is being covered in the mainstream media and how it is that the internet discusses him now. As David, as we talk about journalism, this is what you had happen yesterday that I was watching. I was like, whoa, all right, that's different. So McAfee's got his own thing that he rents to ESPN, and that's a wrestling show. And now a wrestling character is talking about the Shannon Sharpe lawsuit on ESPN's airwaves, but Pat McAfee has his thing. Stephen A. Smith has his thing and spends his entire show away from ESPN saying, this is a podcast I own and operate. And he's talking about all the things related to Shannon Sharpe that he can discuss, while in the unusual thicket, David, where I'm reading Disney getting headlines and no comments around 19-year-old woman allegedly mad because of an Instagram live that was Shannon Sharpe having sex loudly with another woman. All of this in Disney's thicket. And you've got McAfee's got his own show. Stephen A. Smith has his own show. And Shannon Sharpe is on Instagram, not talking about it on ESPN, now outing and doxing an accuser. And there's a big public fight in which a lawyer for Shannon Sharpe is saying that the woman turned down a $10 million settlement. This story is a mess. We should be waiting for facts. There's more time for it to unspool. But what do you make of what you've seen so far?
Well, first we have to talk about what a settlement means, just because it's been so unclear, where people assume when you make a settlement offer, that means that you're automatically guilty or that you've done the underlying action. Actually, it's a math equation, believe it or not. When you have a lawsuit that is pending, you speak to your lawyers and they talk to you about the probability. So if he's being sued for $50 million, stay with me here, Dan, and the lawyer says, Shannon, there's a 10% chance of this happening, of the victory against you, of you losing. 10% of 50 million is $5 million. That means the value of the lawsuit is $5 million. But the legal fees are going to be $8 million, no matter what. If you have no liability or if you're found liable for $50 million, you're going to pay me $8 million. That's a total of $13 million. That's when you go to the other side and you say, I'll give you 10. That doesn't mean I did it. Doesn't mean I didn't do it. It's called a nuisance settlement amount, and it's discovered through a simple math equation based on probability. And that's all it does. So when the 10 million was offered, now people go crazy. Oh my God, how can you be so stupid as to say you didn't do it and then offer 10? That's how.
Take us through the most interesting parts of this, understanding that it's a civil suit and understanding that there were strategic leaks over the weekend in order to try. And people were prepared for whatever this weekend brought.
So when you have a lawsuit or you're negotiating a contract, you absolutely, whether it's with a player, whether you're buying another business, in the business world, there's all sorts of publications that we don't focus on in sports media. There's business publications, there's industry publications where leaks happen all the time, and they're done to further your position in a negotiation. It is no shock that Shannon Sharpe has out there that there is a $100 million offer for his show, that there are multiple $100 million offers for his show. That doesn't mean they exist. We've seen that in the sports world where agents say, oh, we've got 5 teams interested in my player at 25 million, and you know there aren't even 2 teams. But you feel like you're in the dark, so you may make a bigger offer. What Sharpe is doing with his show is smart, trying to maximize value by leaking out there that there could be 9-figure offers, multiple.
David,
then all of a sudden, sorry, go ahead.
David, if I'm in a courtroom and I take the Fifth Amendment, I'm not incriminating myself, yet the public perception would be, what is he hiding? Why doesn't he want to answer? In this case, would you agree that Shannon Sharpe, if it's true, offering a $10 million settlement from a public relations standpoint, sort of makes you think.
Did you not hear what he just said, though? Like, did you?
I understand, but we're talking about public perception now.
Well, but no, David, I guess I don't know that he wasn't necessarily listening.
I was listening.
Okay,
I was listening.
Okay, but he's just talking about he's coming into this position. What Greg is saying to you is, I've arrived at the position that $10 million means you're guilty. You explained everything you did, and he's like, yeah, and $10 million still makes me feel like you're guilty.
I understand that when a lawyer is telling me that, and when a former club president is telling me that. What I'm asking you is, from a public perception standpoint, does that serve Shannon Sharpe to have it out there?
And I understand his question in this regard, David. They've decided to make a mud fight out of this. And if all of this gets this kind of dirty, it's the kind of thing you're exactly trying to avoid when everybody is fighting over money.
Not anymore, though, I don't think. And
exactly.
I'm curious to hear David's thoughts on this. It seems as though media personalities, especially in sports, have taken their hint from politics and how they just power through. Steve Smith, his name is in the news cycle for 2 days, and he moves on. He persists. Shannon Sharpe has learned that, especially when it comes to Busby, this is the exact same. Busby sued Jay-Z, and he is going about it the exact same way that Jay-Z and his camp did, and that was very effective for Jay-Z. So, David, I'm curious your thoughts on this bit of sea change. We're dealing with a societal shift when it comes to moralities applied to these things. The punishment that people get just for allegations is also shifted because Shannon Sharpe, back in the day, he'd be pulled from television for 5 days even if they didn't do anything at the very least, and that's kind of changed. They're affording him the opportunity to defend himself. It's a bit different these days.
Well, what's interesting to me is whether or not ESPN was involved in the decision to allow Shannon Sharpe to make the statements he made, because you tell your client, it's the number one rule, be quiet. Anything you say is not going to help you. But now with social media, the shift is it doesn't impact a jury. It doesn't impact what an award would be, but it impacts your ability to monetize your platform. What Shannon Sharpe decided with his lawyer is that the mud fight and the publicity on your show, Dan, on Steven's show, on McAfee's show, everybody's talking about him. And the equation was, we are not getting lower offers for my Club Shay Shay and all the stuff that I do as a free agent just because I'm involved in this mud fight. As a matter of fact, what I'm learning is I'm getting more offers and more money. The more outrageous things are. That's what bothers me about this, is that the moral center that used to exist for what Mike just described as the 5-day rule, which is if anything you are accused of, a network would pull you. It would be called administrative leave, paid leave, you can call it, but you would not be on the air, and therefore you'd be silenced because there was no social media. There'd be no way to get your point across. Now, companies have been neutered because employees have the ability to reach more people almost on their own. So Shannon Sharpe has this strategy. Will it work? The only way we'll know is with his free agent signing as a podcast. It's not about the settlement with this woman or Tony Busby or any of it. It's what happens to his show. And if his show becomes less valuable, then you know that they made the wrong decision in terms of PR.
But David, you're watching this play out, right? We're all seeing the same thing. If the numbers are reported at 100 million for Shannon Sharpe, you're looking at McAfee, Shannon Sharpe, and Stephen A. Smith are all worth the same thing. They are all getting the same contract, and they all have their side gigs. And so Stephen A. yesterday is in the weird position of, it felt like to me, David, I don't know if you heard what he was doing on his own show. He's in the unusual position as he's considering a presidential run while building his own thing. And it felt to me like he wouldn't want Shannon Sharpe to be back on the air, but we're playing a totally different game now where McAfee, Stephen A., and Shannon Sharpe all have the same amount of money and power.
Well, you also have to just think about who's president now and what platform that Trump used to become president. And you think if Stephen A. Smith is going to run for president, he was very measured in his 20 minutes on his show. He actually said, I don't know anything. I brought Shannon to ESPN. I attempted. He's my partner. He's my friend. And I want to believe him because I want it to not be true, but I just don't know. But by the way, he did a read for Prize Picks before the show. He then did an entire conversation about how he has ESPN bosses, how while it's his own show, the podcast, he's got other employers. So he was very measured because you don't want to be on the wrong side of this, no matter whether it's your friend or not, having nothing to do with being president. As a matter of fact, you have a better chance to become president than monetizing your podcast if you're on the wrong side of an issue like this one.
And in the middle of it, right, just powering through, oh my God, I don't know what's true there, where a woman just got strategically outed yesterday by name, right? And so that's where this gets super dirty, wherever it is that Shannon Sharpe can frame here as a victim.
Yeah, I'm not a journalist, but I thought that there was a rule that everyone followed, that you did not disclose the name of a victim of a sexual assault. I just assumed that rule was still in place, and you do file under Jane Doe in order to, that's very common. It's common both criminally and civilly in order to protect the name of the person involved, the victim. But in this case, what Shannon Sharpe did, you have every right to name a person. You have every right to defend yourself in any court of law, any legal action. That's an interesting choice, though, because more so than the $10 million settlement offer, I found the choice to name the name the more suspect choice.
Well, David,
I don't think it was necessary.
David, well, wait a minute. So now it gets dirtier and dirtier and more shameless. And, Mary Kate Cornett is suing Pat McAfee, allegedly, because you can't just be on these airwaves ruining lives, David. There has to be a standard, right?
Well, there is, Dan. There are laws about that. There's libel, there's slander, there's defamation, there's absolute protection. And when you are a public figure, you give up many of those protections. And that is well established by the Supreme Court. You, Dan, people can say anything they want about every one of us on this show, actually. And there is nothing that we can do about that.
Any other takes that you can find helpful here while trying to navigate we don't know what the facts on some of these things are, but we know that things are loud, explosive, and going to get messy before we even get to the facts.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm thinking about is Disney. And, you heard Bob Iger at the World Congress of Sport talking about the DTC, the direct-to-consumer that they're going to have with ESPN. Jimmy Pitaro was talking about it. They have a lot of eggs in that basket. We don't know what the name of it yet is, but what we do know is that it is so critical for Disney, for the Disney company, and for its share price, is to make this ESPN new platform successful. It is so critical whether there is any shine that gets tarnished by any of the people in that orbit. And that becomes a big deal in the boardroom, because in the Disney boardroom, they don't much care. And I know you don't understand or believe this, actually. Not understand it, of course you do. They don't really focus on, oh, wow, McAfee's famous, Le Batard's famous, and so is Stephen A. and Shannon Sharpe. They're great voices. In the boardroom, they're focused on far different and bigger issues, and they're not going to let anything get in the way of a company being profitable and growing. And so Shannon just has to be careful here, although I could argue that everyone should always be careful in every regard, but often they're not.
What would you have been advising Shannon Sharpe around the idea that First Take and Disney isn't going to want any of this around them? There's going to want to be some sort of separation, even if we're doing innocent till proven guilty. So how do you?
Well, it's not criminal. You're the second person in the media who said that.
No, fair point. Yes, it's a civil.
Keep in mind.
Yeah, my bad.
So that threshold is different. It's not even beyond a reasonable doubt. That's all criminal, and this is not a criminal case. So, and this is not me defending Shannon or not. It's not about that. I'm just trying to give you the facts. And I just what concerns me most about what Shannon did, and forget the action that he's accused of, which we don't know. We don't know the facts. The reason why we should all be quiet about this issue is that we don't know. And we're in the world of speculation. That's what we do in sports media and in business. But it would be far more interesting to speculate on things happening with sports teams and the business of sports than when it involves a person and a violent sexual act. I don't want to be in the business of speculating about that on either side because it's not appropriate. I'd much rather speculate why everyone's going to watch the draft instead of a Marlins game.